that I'm blessed. It's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a...
All right, guys, welcome to the Father Alchemist Podcast. Super excited to have Joe Legolvan back with us today for the second time. Dude,
Yes.
it's awesome to see you. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. And, one thing that I really admire about you, man, is like, you're always pushing yourself to do more. You're pushing yourself to be in better shape. You've got that attitude of somebody that wants to win. But you have such depth and perspective based on your own personal story and what you've gone through with your family. And, it's like every time I'm around you, I'm like, dude, this guy's just salt of the earth. He's a great dude. Not to mention what you've created. And I think that that's, at least for me, something that's super inspiring because you kind of took an idea and something that you believed in, and now you're influencer. You own a bunch of real estate, other businesses. You've accomplished a lot. You're young. You're in fucking awesome shape. You're just kind of hitting the mark in all the different areas of life that I think most people would look at and go, my idea of success is to have some level of success in these areas, personal health, finance, relationships. It's awesome to see what you're doing with your wife now and how you guys are kind of collaborating on content there. But some people may not have seen the first episode with us. So make sure you guys go back and check that out. It was a phenomenal podcast in my opinion. And I'm just excited to catch up with you, honestly, because it's been,
same.
So I know we have a lot to talk about, and maybe you could just tell me what you've been up to. I think last time we talked, you were in the process of buying a place in Miami. So now you've got that. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that is the content capital of the world, and it's one of those places that I go that I feel like you get so much inspiration because whatever level we're at, like you look around, you're like, oh, there's more levels to this. There's more to do, more to see. And there's just so much inspiration out there. Plus I love the ocean and all that stuff, but I appreciate the intro here. And the thing, it's so wild. Like I ask the questions on my Instagram a lot. And the other day somebody was like, how do you stay motivated? And it's weird because when you're in the fishbowl, you don't really see out of it, which I'm sure you can relate to. You're like, well, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Like, of course I'm going to grind hard. Of course I'm going to build a company and whatever. But the thing is like, I kind of like came to the conclusion that any rational human being is going to be motivated. And there are aspects of our identity that are holding us back from that, right? Like, so figuring out those parts of ourselves and myself, like whatever parts of my ego that are totally pointless. Like we wake up and we just repeat the same things and we're burning so much energy, on guilt, regret, fear of the future, all these different things like that. And so if I can really, it's not about building motivation. It's more about taking all the crap out. And then the natural result is a motivated human being because we all want to grow, to become the best versions of ourselves. I think that's super natural to anything.
It's funny. It reminds me of this. I don't know if it was a quote by Warren Buffett, but somebody had asked him about like, once he had reached a certain level of success, like how did he do it? And his response was basically like, I learned how to say no. Because I think a lot of times, especially when you're somebody that is motivated, that, you want to reach to a higher level and expand your being to reach everything that you possibly can. I think you just, at least for me, like I get into that sort of framework of like, just yes to everything.
Right.
And I think, what tends to happen is then you burn out and you realize that you really can't do it all. And you probably don't want to do it all. And you're not great at all of it anyway.
Sure.
So it's like, how do you identify and become hyper aware of the things that you're actually good at?
Right.
Not to say you don't work on weaknesses, but knowing what you're good at and then propelling that forward, but also having the awareness to know what isn't going to serve you and being able to say no to it.
Right. And do you ever watch those mockumentaries? Like they're like these like goofy documentaries that people will do, but there's always one like on those where like somebody is like a terrible singer, but they are just so motivated in doing that. And it's like a big joke, but we do that to ourselves. Like we all have those areas that we're just like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I think you're right. The self-awareness piece is so key to know. And it's a growing and changing thing as we grow and change. It's like, what I'll probably be doing 10 years from now may be vastly different. Right. And so it's just finding that little niche.
So I'm curious, like when you first, like, do you feel like you were, ever since you were a little kid, like, did you always have sort of an inclination to, like I remember very vividly when I was in middle school and I was walking home with a friend of mine. His name was Jimmy. I can remember the exact street. And I remember making the comment to him that, like, one day I'm going to be rich.
Mm.
And now at the time, like, I think where that came from is being raised in a, lower middle class family where, like my dad never spent money on anything for himself. And like,
Right.
I sort of saw that. And I think just at the time, it's like, I don't want to live like that. But for you, when did that gradually occur over time? Or do you have a story like that when you were younger where you envisioned this higher quality of life?
Yeah, I guess, growing up in the 90s, like most of us, like we were exposed to media in all fronts. So I think we all had those fantasies as watching movies. Like I remember watching The Karate Kid, John Clive Van Damme. I'm like, I'm gonna look like that fucking guy. Like, sure. And
Yeah.
so little like
Looking back, you're like, I look way better.
no, I'm like, that guy looks like shit. No, just kidding. But he was awesome. That was like a big inspiration for me. And then you have little things that you see. As I got, and of course the music scene was huge, right? Like I grew up in the kind of alternative music scene, which I'm sure you did too. And it was all about like being outside of the box. And I love that because, we're in a culture right now that is like, we're growing and changing a lot for sure as a culture. And I think it's a beautiful thing, but a lot of times we just keep repeating the same old story. We keep repeating the same history. And that's more on a macro view, but on the micro view, we as an individual have a culture, and that individual culture, if we keep repeating that over and over, meaning like our same mindset, our same identity, we are going to live the exact same life. Right. And one question I always ask my clients is like, if you were to wake up tomorrow and completely forget who you were, like you just, and we all have that moment when you're first kind of waking up, you're groggy, you look around, you're like, where am I? What am I doing? Oh yeah, I'm this person. I have this identity. I have this family. I have these problems. But if you completely forgot who you were, would you live the same life you live now? And of course the answer is no, because you'd be like, what the hell? You would have different relationships to people, to life, to society. And so every day it's like an opportunity for us to say, who do I want to be? And what aspects of myself are totally pointless, are totally ruining my life, are making my mindset worse, is stealing energy from me. And so like, ultimately, I think as I've grown, it's like a many little episodes of that throughout my life where I'm constantly getting realizations of who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? But nothing necessarily pivotal stands out, but it's been a lot of those little pieces.
Dude, that is so good because I think, like, even if I examine my own life, and I've shared here on the show and with you personally that I've struggled with addiction over a period of time. And thanks to Ibogaine, which I'm happy to talk to you about that today.
Yeah.
But like, I haven't had any desire, I haven't picked up anything ever since I went through that treatment. And, but prior to that, how many times have we told ourselves like, dude, that's it. Monday, I'm not eating ice cream anymore, or
Right.
I'm going to drop the vice, or I'm going to show up at the gym. I'm going to get in shape. And every year we set a New Year's resolution. I'm going to do these things. And then, it's really our identity and who we are. We don't believe that that's actually who we are. And so we default back into this sort of previous individual, because it's what we're comfortable with. And, I've often wondered when I've had relapses and I've struggled, like, man, why is it that at one point I was so convinced of something only to find that I'm kind of back in that, back in that same spot.
Right.
And I think it's really important what you just said, being able to recognize that every single day when we wake up, it's not only do we have the ability to completely change who we are and who we're becoming, but we have to choose that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a daily choice. It's a daily choice to stay married sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Like you're choosing that individual. You're not just like, here I am because I'm married. You have to intentionally choose to be with that person. So dude, I love that you shared that.
Yeah.
And
Well, and to piggyback off that, like one of the things that we are choosing, because we do frame that generally in the positive sense, right? Like I'm choosing to work out, or I'm choosing to stay married, or I'm choosing to be a good person, right? But what a lot of times we don't realize is subconsciously we are choosing our own suffering. And so to keep that suffering going, it literally requires effort from us. Like think about like something in the past and really sitting there and regretting. You are literally using your own brain to keep that thing active, or, you know, worrying about the future or whatever, right? Like, and you're sitting there thinking about that over and over. Like the parts of ourself that cause us the most suffering, we are literally doing ourself, and we are literally expending energy to do that. And so again, it's like, it's realizing, taking full responsibility over our own mindsets and saying, why would I choose to feel bad every single day? Why would I choose to continue to beat myself up over something that, you know, like when it comes to the past or the future, we judge ourselves in our current state of mind. Because in my current state of mind, I know my past was bad, right? Like I'm like, oh, I was an idiot, I was dumb. But you weren't that person. You were a different identity. Similarly, now the identity I have as a human being, I'm worrying about my future, and I'm saying, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to handle that? Well, guess what? The future identity I'm going to have is going to be way different. So I'm going to be able to process that different, move different. So again, there are so many aspects of ourselves that I think we are choosing, that when people really look at their lives and they look at the amount of suffering they go through, that if they really saw that they were the ones doing that to themselves, everything would change. But that brings me back to your I will gain experience. I don't know a lot about it. I'm familiar with hallucinogenics, but I did see the change in you, and you told a wonderful story. And I just would like to get your insight on that. What you think that did for your addiction and mindset?
Yeah. I wish I could take, credit for saying like, I want to do this, but really it was my wife who, frankly, just kind of was at the end of her rope and was like, dude, like, I love this guy, but like, it's like, I can't live with this person if he's going to continue to be destructive. And,
Sure.
And frankly, I couldn't blame her. I couldn't blame her for that. Like I was able to recognize that I was in this pattern of destruction and how it was affecting other people. And it's like, I think you talk to anybody that struggles with addiction, it's like, they don't actually want to be addicted to something.
Sure.
But they just don't know how to snap out of it.
Right.
And it's like, so what happens is they continue to reach for the thing that continues to bury them and creates more shame and guilt. And so they reach for the thing so that they can escape it. And then when they're done escaping it, there's more shame and guilt. But what had happened was she reached out to her brother. Her brother lives out of the country in South America. And she just said, dude, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And he's had experience with overcoming his own addiction and plant medicine. And he says, look, the first thing you need to do is you need to get this guy something called combo. And combo is, it comes from a tree frog on top of the Amazon forest.
Okay.
So it's a super septic part of the rainforest. And it's basically a secretion from the frog. You go through a process where, like with the incense, you burn, you're burnt a few times, and then this stuff gets absorbed into the bloodstream. And anyway, he had known all about it and knew the power of this and what it could do.
Is that similar to Bufo?
Bufo.
Okay.
So Bufo is very different. Very different.
Okay.
Yeah. So Bufo is DMT, which is a gnarly hallucinogenic. For anybody that's never tried it, it's, at least with mushrooms, with LSD, with ibogaine, these are all experiences where even when you're in the medicine, there's still some element of awareness. Like you're aware that you're tripping.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
with Bufo, you are totally, it's like you are blacked out, gone, zero awareness.
Yeah.
And you're not a human being. You know,
You're awareness, your consciousness.
Yeah. You are like this, ethereal grid, going through this tunnel and everything's pixelated. And
wow.
Combo is more of like, if you're familiar with niacin, they put niacin inside of pre-workout sometimes. Like if you ever take a pre-workout and you feel that sort of hot flush that goes through your body or through your head, there's tiny amounts of niacin, like super tiny amounts of niacin. So Combo, I would say it's like the equivalent of like a massive amount of niacin going through your body. And so what happens is it's, and I'm not a plant medicine practitioner, so I can't totally speak perfectly to this, but it basically is affecting your hormones and it's moving through your body in a way that is releasing trauma through the top part of your muscle and the skin. And so the feeling that you get from Combo is like it goes from your feet to your head, back down, back up, back down. The whole thing's probably 20, 30 minutes. And you go from shaking because you feel like you're freezing, but it's not freezing, to like, I'm so fucking hot. Like this is crazy. I'm on fire, to like back to shaking and stuff. And so it just, it's releasing trauma from the muscle. Well, so her brother said he's got to try Combo. So she starts researching with him and comes across a plant medicine practitioner that is only advertising Combo. So she calls her and my wife gives her the whole story about me and everything that's going on. And she goes, no, he needs Ibogaine. And she goes, what's Ibogaine? So Ibogaine is... It's actually a tree bark, comes from the iboga tree out of a village in West Africa. This is something that's traditionally given to these, and I don't know if they're, teenagers, but it's basically like a rite of passage that's given to these kids once they reach a certain age and they go through this, hallucinogenic process. Some people say that it might be similar to ayahuasca. This is very unique and it's become more and more popular more recently. It used to be totally illegal in the United States. I think there's still some legalities in question with it. I know for a long time, the only way you could go do it would be to go to Mexico and have it administered by somebody. I think that it's loosening a little bit only because there's so much research and so much science now. You've got mainstream podcasters like Joe Rogan that are talking about it and big proponents of it. That are fact checking everything. And basically it's been proven now to have up to a 90% efficacy rate for addiction.
Wow.
Primarily, with opiate addiction.
Okay.
Which is what I had been struggling with. But also like I have several friends that were really struggling with alcoholism. One in particular, he did it. He tried Ibogaine 2 years ago, hasn't touched a sip of alcohol in 2 years.
Holy cow.
So I'll share two things. One, what my experience was, and then from my understanding, what it's actually doing through this process. So it's administered in a little capsule. So basically you're given a pill. Now I had to, the way that it was shared with me and how to do it was there was the bark, which is like a mild version of the Ibogaine, but it was something that 10 days prior to the administration of the Ibogaine, I was consuming these like tiny capsules of bark, and that dosage was being increased slightly during that 10-day period up until right before I did the Ibogaine. And
were you feeling that at all?
Yeah. It basically, it was nothing crazy. Like I was still able to function and work and go through my day, but it basically makes you extremely present brings you into your body. So if you're somebody that's constantly thinking about 1,000 things and it's in a way that's destructive, like it forces you to have obsession and compulsion and reach for things that aren't going to be good for you, like drugs or alcohol, it brings you back into your body so that you're super, super present, maybe a slight element of sedation. But this was sort of like a precursor and leading up to the Ibogaine, so your body could assimilate to, like, instead of just being totally shocked.
Right. And your mindset can kind of assimilate. Because, like, I know when I used to smoke weed back in the day, it would, like, you would be in one state of mind, you'd take a hit, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoosh, okay, I'm high now, right? And that can almost be disorienting as opposed to like a creeper that kind of sneaks in on you. Yeah. So it sounds like they were trying to just get you more and more present with your own mind and your own shit.
Yeah. And so that I had some sense of like what this was going to feel at like a massive dose, basically.
Yeah.
Now, from what I heard, there used to be sort of a protocol where like everybody would be administered this same dose of Ibogaine. And then as more research was done, they found out that that's not necessary because everybody's different. And all that's necessary is that you're, they call it in the medicine, which is basically you're having this full kind of out of body hallucinogenic experience, which might be one Ibogaine capsule for some, it might be 5 for others. Right. So you want to make sure there's no possible way anybody should ever do this totally by themselves and give it to themselves. At least not the first time they're ever doing it. And here's why, because, so you're fasting for up until that day. I think it was 10 PM at night that I was given my first dose. I think I had 3 doses and they were spaced out over about a 30-minute period. So over the course of an hour and a half, I was given 3 Ibogaine capsules, and my wife took the kids. They were gone. It was just me at the house with the plant medicine practitioner. And she says, look, lay down in bed and you can close your eyes or keep them open, but you'll know when it starts to hit you. And then all of a sudden it'll be super intense for about 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on the person. Right. So I remember, I take the first capsule. I'm like, okay, and I'm laying down in bed and also something else I want to say is that, even my wife, her brother who had never tried it, I had started hearing like, and I didn't share with really anybody, maybe a few people that I was going to do this, but I started hearing things like, dude, you're crazy. Like, have you seen the videos? And that takes a lot of balls for you to do that. And I'm going, I don't even know what they're talking about. And I didn't want to know because I didn't want to go into it expecting that I was going to have a bad or a good experience. So I wanted to be a little protected from like all the stuff that's out there. And there's documentaries on it. There's one called The Boga Nights, where it's like this nurse, I can't remember if it was in Mexico or not, but she's like the main person administering this stuff. And, somebody freaking loses his mind coming off of meth, runs in front of a bus and gets killed. And like her whole operation gets shut down. And so the narrative is like now focusing on how this stuff is really bad, but it doesn't talk about the 19 people where it saved their life. Right.
And not the meth that the guy consumed previously. And
So there's always going to be these like, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be any pharmaceutical. Like some people have a negative reaction to anything.
It'd be like going to the doctor and being like, you saved 15 people from a heart attack and one of them died. And that's shut down your whole operation.
And then they shut it down because of that. Yeah. And all he's trying to do is help people. But, so anyway, so I take the first one and probably about 30 minutes in. So like right before the second dose, I'm laying there and I'm in a room that's, maybe a little bit bigger than this room. I'm laying on a bed. The ceiling's probably about that height. There was some kind of psychedelic music that was light in the background. There was like a colored strobe light that was like on the ceiling and stuff. And and there's particle board just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking at the ceiling and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? That looks like a tiger. Like I really, in my mind, I'm like, why does that's crazy. And then I look over here and I'm like, whoa, what's that? It's like cartoonish. And, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, something's starting to kick in. This isn't like my mind or my eye. Well, my mind playing tricks on me, but my eyes playing tricks on me as well, I guess.
Either our contractors were really good at what they did. With the particle board.
Why didn't they tell me about this when I bought the house? This is amazing. So, but then I take the second dose, and honestly, I don't even remember taking the third dose because I was just
blast off. Huh?
Yeah, blast off. And basically, so the unique thing about Ibogaine is that, so first of all, it is highly, highly, highly visual. Okay. So, I mean, you are not only visual, like me describing the particle board looking like a tiger, but now I am literally seeing like movies play out in front of me, cartoons. I'm seeing like, I'm in Greece and there's like statues of like me and Soli and the kids. And like, we're on a river and now there's another frickin' tiger jumping out. But this is like, you know, like you believe that this is actually really, it's a trip. I mean, you are just highly, highly visual. But then what is also unique about it is this is all with my eyes open. So then I go, well, and it almost gets to a point. I mean, you know, just imagine 2 hours into this and you can't shut it off. Right. It's just over and over and over again, these movies and these visuals that are playing that are, you know, trying to communicate something to you about who you are and what your spirit is. But then I remember looking outside because the door was open so that the plant medicine practitioner could like hear me if I needed help or something.
Right.
But so I'm looking out the open door and like beyond that door is another room, the light's off, but I could kind of see the beginning entry space to that other room. And now I'm seeing, I didn't see you, but I saw it was like my elders. I saw human beings that were congregating in that room. I'm talking full body. And I'm just, you know, keep in mind, I'm in bed on my back. I'm just watching this, but I'm seeing like their heads turn like this and look at me and then like walk past the doorway, and that over and over and over again. So all these different people from different countries. I mean, I remember seeing a woman with a burqa on. I remember seeing a warrior, like a gladiator type individual. But like real people, like they're there. Right. You know?
Now, do you think those are like your spirit guides or what have you, or is it just more?
So, So I'll tell you what I think it all was. But then when you close your eyes, and I've heard this is consistent with Ibogaine, like for most people that take it, they experience this. When you close your eyes, imagine a pinpoint light, almost like a tunnel, and it's almost like a filing cabinet of Polaroids. Okay. So imagine every mental image picture, because our brains are powerful computers. Any trauma that we've ever experienced, any positive moments, all of it is recorded. Okay. So we have these mental image pictures from the time we were a kid. And when you close your eyes, it's like flashing like through all these mental image pictures of every moment you've ever experienced in your entire life, which means as you're experiencing this, there are moments of like joy and fulfillment and happiness. And then there are moments of, you feel ashamed, you're embarrassed, you feel scared, you're nervous, you're, because you are also experiencing and going through the trauma that you've actually gone through in your life, which might be the reason that every time you experience that trauma, at the time it's subconscious, but it's so painful, you don't want to experience it. And you numb out with drugs or alcohol, or pornography or online shopping or anything that's distracting you from that pain. So this is forcing you to confront it. So all of these things I've described are visual for the most, they're visual. But what I think is the differentiator between ibogaine and any other psychedelic is that there's a physical component to it.
Mm.
So the physical component is, imagine you're laying there for 8 hours of this absolute intensity visually, whether your eyes are open or closed. And at some point, you're probably going to have to pee.
Yeah.
So what do you do when that happens? Well, you can't just get up and go to the bathroom, because it is like there is an electric force field totally encapsulating your entire body. And so the slightest movement, I'm talking like no more than this, Joe. Like you move like this, you want to violently vomit and you're going to get sick.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So, and I remember the first time I felt like I really got to go to the bathroom. So I'm calling Sean. Later, she's like, "You never said anything. I was standing right there. You never said anything. You thought you were calling my name, but you weren't."
Yeah.
So I had to find a way to get up by myself, because apparently I wasn't saying anything. And so she wasn't like coming to help guide me. And so, but I was like one millimeter at a time moving. I had to prop myself up kind of like on the bed, because the second I would go to stand up and not have all fours being supported, I felt like I was going to fall over. Wow. It was very like woo, wonky. And thank God the bathroom was like very close, but it felt like it was so far away. And visually you can see the electricity going around your entire body. And it's like the game of Operation, where like the second you touch the edge, it zaps you. So that's what it is. It's like you're being zapped, and then you feel nauseous. So then next time, you go to lay down, you kind of think twice about getting up, just because it's such an ordeal.
Yeah.
Just to get up and go to the bathroom. So anyway, so that whole thing was, like I said, probably 6 to 8 hours of absolute like in it, intense. Then you start to come out of it, which by now, because I took it at, between 10 and 11:30 p.m. or midnight. So now it's the next morning at, 8 or 9 a.m. And then you're basically in this dream state for 3 days. So, which is like, you're aware that you're there now. You're not hallucinating or anything.
Right.
But you're very, very relaxed. And then I went through bouts of like, I think I'm good. And like, I can go drive the car to get some food, even though you don't want to eat. And she's like, "No, you're not driving. I'll drive you if you have to go somewhere." So it was just moments of like, I got a bunch of energy now. Let me go make some food, to like, I literally can do nothing right now but lay down and sleep. And so I'd sleep for a few hours, wake up, sleep for a few hours, wake up. And anyway, so the whole process was about, I think 4 full days of like being at the house. The last couple we got out, and like I would walk at the lake and the park there. To answer your question, I don't know what it all meant. I don't know that it even matters, and what it the way it's been explained to me is like, when this happened, when you take this, it's almost like, imagine your entire body, your brain, it's a hard drive, and this is wiping the entire hard drive and hitting reset.
Right.
It's cleaning out the crevices in your brain that have gotten clogged up with dust and particles that have caused now for there to be this emotional response to something that you feel that now triggers an action to go and numb out with drugs or alcohol, right? Because, and I think I shared this with you, but if you think about, I use the example of like a cigarette smoker where, in their mind, it's like, hey, if I'm feeling stressed out, right? I want to relax. And so if I go smoke a cigarette, that's going to relax me. So there's this sort of mental connection to like, I'm feeling stressed to like, if I do that, it's going to give me this feeling.
Right.
Same thing with any drug. If I take this drug, it's going to give me this feeling. Well, so imagine now an addict who they've struggled with a particular drug of choice for 10 years or 20 years. And they know that if they do this, this is how they're going to feel. For whatever reason, they feel like that's the best they're ever going to feel. That's why they do it, right? Or they're going to escape pain. But what I found with a lot of addicts is that, if they're in pain, they use. If they've just experienced the best thing on the planet, they also go use. So it doesn't matter. Right. They're just anything is a good reason to go and pick up. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
With Ibogaine, it's totally wiping the hard drive and resetting the electrical circuit. So it was the most bizarre feeling, dude. And I even like probably 2 days after that 4-day experience, I was sitting at my kitchen table and I was like zoning out the window into the backyard. And Soli's sitting there and she notices that I'm just like kind of in la la land, like zoning out. And she goes, "What are you thinking about right now?" And I was like, "Nothing."
Yeah.
And like, I literally, and it was almost an uncomfortable feeling because I was thinking about nothing and there was nothing that I even wanted to think about or imagine. It was literally like a clean slate. Yeah. Like now I can recreate, to your point earlier in the conversation, I can recreate whoever I want to be and whatever I want to become completely because I have no attachment emotionally to the thing that I thought was giving me pleasure because that doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
So, so for me, it's been good. I've been told that, it takes about a year for your brain to like really
integrate it,
like kind of get to a point of total reset and feeling back to your, like yourself with your original spirit. Yeah. And I would say sincerely, man, anybody with any form of addiction, not just drugs or alcohol. I mean, I've even told Soli, like, it's crazy. Like, I don't, like before I would go on to eBay or Poshmark or the Louis Vuitton app or, whatever. And I'd be just like looking at shit to buy, whether I would buy it or not. I'd be sucked into the phone and scrolling, a lot of times at night. Now, even though it's like, oh, let me go and check out eBay. It's crazy, dude. The second it pops up, my brain goes, this is boring. And I set my phone down. It's like, I don't even want to pick up my phone. So it has the ability to break that chain on, I think, any addiction that somebody might have. So if you are somebody that's experiencing that, if you've got a family member or a friend and, it's like, I hate to hear it, but I just had somebody that unfortunately, their brother took their own life and it was drug related. They were in addiction. I wasn't totally aware of the situation, but it's like, man, if you're at your last, like if you're sort of like, dude, I'm giving up, kind of, you're in that sort of place, or somebody that is in that sort of place, don't fucking give up and at least go try this and see. Because it worked for me, and I think that it can work for, I think it can work for a lot of people. What I'm most excited to see is like, what does my life look like because it's been about 6 months. Zero desire for any of it. It's just like, it doesn't even enter. It's not even like there's just no desire. It's really weird.
That's wild.
Yeah. But yeah.
Well, and a couple of things I took out of that story that relate to some of the spirituality I've been exposed to, the near-death experiences, right? And you hear about those where they see the pinpoint light, they go to light, and then they go through what is known as a life review, where they re-experience everything they've ever done. They feel not only how they felt in that experience, but how other people felt. And of course, like that can be traumatic because we're looking at like, oh, this is the time I was an asshole to my kid or my wife, or I was just in a bad mood and I was pissing everybody off. And you see that clearly, but they say they're held in such a loving state that they're not really being judged for it as much as just seeing, this is how your personality is interacting. So it almost sounds like you went through a near-death experience, quite honestly, like with that, or maybe that like pseudo brings you to that point.
That's a great way to describe it, because that is what you're experiencing, all of these moments in time, and you are seeing it from everybody's perspective, but there is no judgment. There's just the experience of it. And so it allows you to have compassion for yourself, compassion for other people, and kind of you're in a state of really love. Like it's probably the closest thing to like pure love that you can feel, because there is none of that judgment or baggage.
Yeah. And that's so huge. And then the other aspect you were talking about, where you were looking out the window and Soleil's like, what are you thinking? And you're like, nothing. It's so funny because that's like, in Vedantic world, there was like these yogis that were real big in India. And one of them was named Ramana Maharshi. And he was one of these guys that taught misery is an unwanted thought, that we don't have to work to attain bliss. We literally have to stop working to keep misery around. And so he would be in these states of no thought, and he would describe these. And of course, like in Buddhism, you'll hear the same thing, or whatever. And I think the misconception that comes in is like, well, if you have no thought, then you're going to be useless in this world, right? You're lobotomized. But it's not that you don't have thought, because you're still thinking, oh, I've got to go to the bathroom. Oh, I've got to go to work. Oh, I got to send out this fax. Like you're very, methodical with your thinking, but you're not all clouded with, oh, I can't believe I did this. Oh, I can't believe I'm this type of person. All the clouded thoughts that are so unnecessary, which probably 90% of what we think about in our day-to-day life is completely unnecessary thought. And so that description that you gave is so clear of just going back to that kind of bliss state. And what I always appreciated with that is the zero-sum game of any human being is that bliss state. Like it's kind of like our default, right? Like when we fall, you're going to land in that bliss state. Because why? Because that's what consciousness, that's what awareness is. All the other things that we're thinking, doing, that's like causing us misery or causing us envy or causing us greed or what, all these like little mental tangents that we go on. When all that is wiped, you are left with consciousness, awareness, which is pure bliss, So it's really like, it really speaks to that and kind of verifies in my mind of that mindset.
Would you ever try it?
It depends. I know for me, I don't want to necessarily reset at this moment. I've had similar hallucinogenic experience, not to that degree, obviously, but with mushrooms, it was a big reset for me. And then to give some context, so when I was in my 20s, I did mushrooms, and then I got really into spirituality and really into meditating and stuff like that. And I used to hang out with the yogis downtown and stuff, and they would meditate 2-3 hours a day. So I got on their schedule, and I would get to these states of no thought where it was just pure bliss. Like it was just like, I'd be in this state of just like
from meditating.
And so it was a really cool experience, but it was also very gentle for me, because it was just kind of like, oh, I'll just go in there and you kind of work your way up. And I remember the first couple of months, nothing really happened. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, I'm there. And then I could go to that state real instantly and stuff. So it depends. Like if I ever got to that spot where I felt like I was in a self-destructive cycle, I think that's like an awesome way to reset, right? Like, and just reset everything together. So it depends, it sounds pretty, to be honest, like it sounds pretty scary. Like, I
wouldn't recommend it. And it's cool that was your response, because I don't think everybody should do it. I don't think it's necessary for everybody. I think because it is like a complete reset. But we can still weave some of this into it. But I'm curious about a few things with you in particular. Like, So you talked about meditation. You're talking about reading like Vedic scripts or old texts. Like you're an interesting dude. And, I'm wondering a couple things. One, if we were to switch from the sort of philosophical kind of conversation a little bit into something a little more tactical.
Sure.
And I love philosophy, dude. I love thinking about this stuff and especially when it comes to sales and business. And,
sure.
But I think at my core, like hearing really good philosophy and a lot of the Stoics and, some of the people that we both follow, like there's something about it that touches your spirit, touches your soul and drives you forward, but I'm just curious, like, do you have a process where you set goals or do, vision boarding or anything for your personal life or for your family? Do you go through a sit down process ever with that?
Yeah, usually every 6 months. So I'll get a, vision board and do it. And it's just so important because number one, you manifest it. You tend to, like, whenever you have something like that on your life. But I also think it's irresponsible not to manifest in this life because you're kind of not giving your whole human experience like everything it's worth, right? Because if I was born as a tree, all I have to do is be a tree. Like that's it. I'm not planning. I'm just trying to grow big. I'm not planning to go to Africa. I'm not planning to go, travel. I'm not planning to start a business. And that aspect of ourselves, like that creative aspect, a lot of people live their lives like trees. Like they literally are just like, oh, I'm just, whatever life is happening around me, I just go with that. But it's very irresponsible because you are given an intellect, you were given a brain, you were given an imagination. And so for me, I know that is like part of my human experience, that I can use my imagination to do these things. So the tactical process is really just what, we've heard a zillion times from every self-help guru throughout the ages is like, write it down, imagine that it's already happening, right? Don't think about, oh, I will get $1 million. Think I already am a millionaire, right? Like, so imagine yourself in the end already feeling the feelings, doing the things, and life has just such a magical way. Here's the caveat with that though, it won't look exactly the way you want it to look. Like the $1 million may not come in the form that you're looking for, the business or whatever. So you got to also be flexible on the means of that. And so for me, that's been a learning experience because sometimes I'm like, I want this on this day looking like this. And the universe is like, nope, sorry. But then like 3 weeks later, it'll happen, but in a different way that I could never imagine.
It's like being open to all possibilities, but not being attached, to the outcome.
Right. Like you were saying earlier.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, all right. So every 6 months, you kind of go through that process. And then something that like, I know that you're a creator, you're a visionary. I mean, you're a winner, dude. You're somebody that like you're always pushing yourself and, and it's not to say we don't have setbacks and challenging days and, seasons that we go through that are tough and like we're, maybe even feel a little depressed and have to pull ourselves out of that. And I think that's natural for people that want to experience life at a high level.
Yeah.
But like, so do you meditate daily? Do you have like a particular morning routine? I know fitness is super important to you. Diet, like talk a little bit about that stuff.
I would say at this level, my routine is a little more sporadic. But if I had a perfect morning routine and every once in a while I'll do it, it would be like 20 minutes meditation, gratitude exercises, visualizing. I always listen to something self-help positive every single day because I find that even if I know the thing, I think that's like a big mistake. People are like, well, I've heard this before. Well, that's not what it's about. It's not about learning. It's more about reminding, I think
that is the biggest downfall for so many people. I've watched other people. I've had other people on my team in the past where I've noticed this sort of attitude of like, I've heard you say this 1,000 times,
Right.
And I've never understood that, because you're right. Maybe you do hear it 1,000 times, but it's like the 1,001st time it's said differently and
Yeah.
shifts your whole perspective. Right?
Sure.
And I think really what it is it's like the attitude of being closed off because for whatever reason you believe you already know it. And I think that's the death of anybody when it comes to experiencing some level of success. Like, you got to be always willing to be open and willing. And, willing to receive the message differently.
And part of that is probably around the self-awareness piece, right? Because if we don't have compassion, I remember one of my clients said, like, I was talking on one of my stories and she goes, "Oh my God, that hit me so hard. I had so many realizations when you said that." And she goes, "But if I accept this now, what does that mean for my past?" So she's thinking, if I understand this idea now and I really incorporate it into my life and realize I'm the narrator of my own life and my own mindset, then I really have to do a lot of forgiveness for the past 20 years because I've not been living like that, which I think that's where the looking at yourself with that compassion helps so much. And I think a lot of times, when we're teaching or when we're talking about these subjects, we're never really telling anybody anything new. We're just reminding them of what they intrinsically already know. And there's a big difference there. And the reason I like that is because it takes the ego out of it, right? Because if I'm saying, oh, I've got this high knowledge because I'm so important or I'm so great, then you have something that the person doesn't have and you're giving them that. But in reality, like real teachers, all they do is they remind the person, motherfucker, you already know. You already know. And I'm not going to let you go down this route of pretending like you don't know, And so, but it's that constant reminder. And I think sometimes people just, they like where they're going, or they feel like they like where they're going, which is it. And if I have no power, if God has no power to change people's minds, which I think on some level he does, but if he had all the power to, we obviously have free will here. Like, everybody would be enlightened right now, right? Like, if God's like a loving being, but the fact that we have our own ability to shut off the supreme creator, what luck do I have in changing, my mom or my wife or my, it's like,
I'm wondering why, it's like, I guess it doesn't really matter, but there's some people that they just naturally gravitate towards sort of the doom and gloom outlook of everything, or the negative aspect of it, or they're constantly living in their past and almost like using all of the things that, happened to them in the past as a scapegoat for them being the victim.
Right.
And I just wonder, like, I know we like to think that, everybody has the ability to change, and to some extent, I believe that they do, but I wonder if that time is limited. I wonder if, like, I won't say exactly who this is, but there's been somebody in my life for many, many years where, I would always have this, and again, is it nature or nurture? I would always have this sort of positive outlook, and everything that would happen, even if most people would consider it to be bad, I just naturally had this like, well, yeah, but because of this, it's giving us this opportunity. I always had a little bit of a positive spin on absolutely everything. Whereas this person, it was the exact opposite.
Right.
Didn't matter what I said, didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter what I proved to them. Right. Like it just didn't matter. They never changed. And now, years later, that person is still the same way. And, it's almost like, I mean, I'm ashamed to say it, I guess, a little bit, but it's like, I don't even bother trying anymore because it's just not worth the energy.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering, like, do you think some people are just born to live this sort of life of complacency and mediocrity and lack of awareness and negativity and, or is there something that could be said even to maybe that individual that's listening to this shit right now, but then I start thinking like, yeah, if they're listening to this, they're not that type of person because they're listening to this in the first
100%.
place, right? But I don't know. It's just, I think some people, I think there's maybe three types of people. I think there's the people that are like us and like probably the people we surround ourselves with, where it's like constantly pushing the envelope, anything's possible, infinite opportunity, you know, and then there's a second type of person where it's the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
And then there's probably that audience in the middle where it's like, maybe some people would call them realists, where they could see it from both perspectives. And I'm just wondering what you think about, like, are there people that have the ability to change and to go from maybe one of those first two sets of people to that optimistic, positive, I can accomplish anything type of person?
That great question, and I can relate because I think we all have somebody in our life like that, right? And like, I love what Jesus said, like, don't cast your pearls among swine, you know? And it's the idea of like, he was giving the best pieces of wisdom that would stand the test of time for thousands of years. And people are like, this guy's nuts, right? Like, so he was literally giving this out to not have people respond in the way that he, you know, thought. So he's like, I'm going to quit wasting my energy on those type of people. And I think there's definitely truth to that. But the reason why self limitations are so powerful is because we are. So if you convinced yourself, or if a person has convinced themselves, I will never get any better, I will never feel any better, I will never think any better, because they're so powerful, they will continue to create that reality. They will say, I don't understand. You could give them a spreadsheet of why this works, and they'll still say at the end of the day, I don't understand, because the human being is so powerful. And it comes back to the motivational mechanism. Like, we all have a motivational mechanism, and I believe it works 100% of the time in every single individual. And it's very simple, and it is, we are always going towards what we think will bring us pleasure. Now, to some people, they truly think being a victim brings them pleasure. They truly think being in a negative state where they can blame everybody else. And not only that, but it saves them from pain. We're always moving towards pleasure, moving away from pain. And so what I think really, like, what teachers do to people is they point out the fallacy that you living in pain is going to actually be some benefit. And I'm not talking about physical pain or discipline or those type of things. I'm talking about the mental suffering that people go through. And there is some people's motivational mechanisms that are cross-wired to truly believe that suffering causes them some sort of comfort, some sort of safety.
Sure.
Because if I'm suffering, I'm a victim, I feel safe.
Or significance, or
significance.
Now people are doting on them.
100%. Yeah. And there's so many different ones. And so it's like hard to pinpoint one, which I like the saying, there's a million reasons to be unhappy. And yet the people who are happy are usually happy for the same reasons. And it's true. Like, you talk to somebody who's happy, oh, I'm just so grateful. You know, it's like some vague, oh, I just feel happy to be alive. Yeah. Where if you talk to somebody who's sad, oh, my dog died. Oh, I dropped, all this money, or, oh man, I got in a car wreck. Like, that, it's infinite. Like, the reasons to be sad are infinite. The reasons to be happy are very, similar. So it's just finding out what that reason is for the person.
I think a lot of us like this idea of being an entrepreneur or being able to make a ton of money. I mean, let's face it, money is a huge part of what makes the world go round, and it's a necessity, and especially in the United States, right? I mean, the cost of living has dramatically increased, and so it makes sense that there is, we're sort of in this machine where we're perpetuated to make more and more money so we can pay more tax dollars, and so who wouldn't want to make a lot more money, right?
Sure.
But I think a lot of times we want to have this like perfect idea, right? Or we feel like we have to create this one thing, and that's going to be the next Google or Facebook or, Tesla or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think really it's the exact opposite. It's putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, and an uncomfortable situation could be like, hey, I don't have a job right now, and I'm just going to go get a job.
Yeah.
Because to go from the transition of sitting on your fucking couch doing nothing to like going and, you know, even if it's any job, it doesn't matter what it is. I don't want to shit on any specific job, but my point is like making that transition is something that's difficult. Any transition is, but now you've got energy and momentum that's working in one particular thing.
Right.
And that will ultimately lead to something else because you might, you know, let's say that you were doing nothing and you decided to go and serve tables at a restaurant.
Right.
And then you end up meeting somebody who runs a business and thinks you're incredible and decides all of a sudden you're talking about their business and you go work for them.
Right.
And then that catapults you into something else. And now you take that skill set and ultimately, you know, 5 years later, you decide to launch a business.
Right.
My point is like getting yourself to just move in any direction at first can ultimately lead to what you believe today is to be the pinnacle of success, but you just don't know it going into it.
I love that. And that's such a great point because, and I think, you know, when we're getting into the super deep philosophical, talking about eternity and time and stuff like that, it's almost levels of thinking, right? Because if what we have is a finite life, you know, it's only got so many years to it, and our energy's only got so much, like here physically, and you know, my kid's only going to be this age for so much time, you know what I mean? And there's so many things that are evolving around time physically, and so that's a great point. It's just like take the first step there, and of course, the bigger perspective that I'm thinking about is like the perspective that just kind of brings us back to that center place. You know, and I think we actually gather a lot of energy from that place because I like to think of like the video game analogy, right? Like if you were playing a video game and you were so engulfed in the character that you thought you were that character, in reality,
doesn't that exist already?
Yeah, exactly.
You can do that.
Exactly, literally. Which it's been such a good teaching mechanism for us as human beings, right? Like that we can see that you can become an avatar on the screen, that you're so wrapped up in this avatar on the screen that if something bad happens to it, you're like, oh God, you know, and if something good happens to it. Meanwhile, you're safe and sound on the couch, right? And so what some people will do, and I think this is like a cop out, this would be like your stoner who just sits at home all day and says like, it doesn't matter, nothing matters. You know, why would I pursue greatness? Why would I try to be good? That's almost the guy who figures out it's a video game, but then he sits there and quits playing. He just puts it on pause and or sits in a corner. But he forgot the reason you play the game in the first place, which is for fun, which is for growth, which is for change, which is for a challenge, which that's our whole life goal. And I think once we have that like optimal perspective, we are not only more motivated in the game, but more effective because we know ultimately we're safe and sound on the couch. You know, I know ultimately my soul is eternal and it's safe and sound with God, right? But temporarily, I'm having an experience right now that why not play the game to the best of my ability? Why not get as ripped as possible? Why not make as much money as possible? Why not help as many people as I possibly can? Why not put myself through challenges? Because it's a game.
Dude, I think so many people have it backwards, right? Like a lot of people will talk about how, you know, forget about the money, forget about whatever else, fame, family, they can name 1,000 different things. Forget about all that. Really, there's this big conversation now about just, I want to be happy, right? How can I be happy?
Yeah.
And the irony, and this is something that, like, honestly, I've got to remind myself of this shit on a very regular basis because, dude, I hate to admit it, but I'm a lazy fuck. You know, I like being fucking lazy, but there's also this other side to that that's like recognizes that. And so it motivates me to work my ass off because what happens if you think about being lazy, which is like an action that does take energy. And let's say the epitome of that was sitting on the couch. Okay. And now time goes by and now a day turns into a week, into a month, and 6 months later, and you're living on welfare and you've got no money and your life sucks and you're miserable and you're unhappy.
Yeah.
So it's really the act of like doing nothing, building nothing, not being challenged, thinking that taking it easy or retiring or being lazy or taking the vacation. It's like we all want these escapes because we believe that that's actually what pleasure is or happiness is. And then we find out that it's really the exact opposite. Like, dude, I feel most alive, most powerful, most energetic, most successful when I'm like waking up early, pushing myself at the gym, grinding it out during the day. Like when I know that I've pushed through, it's 1 o'clock and I'm a little, more tired maybe than I was a few hours prior, and I'm pushing through it. And I've given that day a lot of my energy. It doesn't matter what the result is.
Yeah.
I could have made 100 sales calls and everybody says, Derek, fuck you. But there's something about the action of actually doing all of that hard work where regardless of the result, at the end of the day, I'm like, fuck, dude, there's something about that. I feel good.
I love that.
So I think it's really the opposite of what people think. It's like doing the hard shit is actually what creates the happiness versus what we think is going to make us happy, which is not doing shit, and it actually makes us miserable.
Absolutely. And to flip it on it, like to give some perspective on that point that you just made, is like it's virtue signaling, because a lot of times people will say,
Totally.
They'll be like, oh, you care about these things because you're materialistic. But happiness is not an external situation. It's a perspective of mind. And so what this person's doing, who just says, I'm going to do nothing, they are saying happiness is a state in which I do nothing, which is also a material state. You are trying to say this state where I don't have any problems, I don't have any challenges, I lay around on the couch, this is my happy place. That is materialism. Because you're looking at a specific situation and saying, this situation is going to make me happy. What we both know is true, and I think a lot of drug addicts know this, is happiness is a perspective. Because you could be on the street. There are some happy homeless people out there that are temporarily happy because their perspective is switched because of the drug. Now, of course, we can do that naturally or whatever, right? Like, so, but happiness is a state of mind. It's a state of knowing who you are and then continuing to create in the dream. That's where I think the rubber meets the road, because you're saying, it's temporary. Yeah, this situation, if I make a ton of money, of course I leave it all here. Or if I build a company, it's not like it lasts forever. But this is a pretty damn good game. And I want to get to that level. I want to get to level 12. I want to get to level 15. And we are happiest when we are trying to pursue higher, right? Like, because again, are you going to stay on level 1 in the game the rest of your life? Like, that's ridiculous. You'll be bored out of your mind,
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about a book called The Gap and the Gain, which is like, when I leave the office today, I'm going to go to the house and get it and start reading it again. But it's basically this, it's about this state of mind of kind of approaching absolutely every situation in your life from a place of gratitude, even if it's the most horrific thing you could possibly experience, and being able to see what how you can be grateful for whatever the situation is. It's a phenomenal book. If you've never read it, you should definitely check it out.
I've heard of it, but
it's so powerful. I got to go back and read it now because I was thinking about it. But dude, I could sit and talk to you here forever. And something that I forgot to do, but guys, so in addition to everything I mentioned in the beginning about Joe, Joe is also a phenomenal coach, coaching content, physical fitness, mindset. I'd love for you to add to that, but also let everybody know where they can find you. And like, dude, this guy's the real deal. So if you're looking for a different perspective, somebody that can challenge you, somebody that can get you on track, I've hired him personally. He's helped me tremendously, and I know he can do the same for you. So where can these guys find you at?
So Create Vision Mindset on Instagram, and then my name, on YouTube, but on a ton of podcasts and stuff. But man, I appreciate connecting with you as well. I feel like we're one of these souls that, like, you have those friends that you just come back and then you instantly, and we'll probably be 10 years from now, and we'll both be in different places and both on a higher level.
Or both in Miami.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, once you close on that, I'll give you some good, I'll connect you with some good people out there. And it's such an inspiration out there. But appreciate you, brother.
I love you, dude.
You as well, man. You as well.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Every time that I see a limit, what? I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck, nah, I had to plan it. The way I work is out of this earth. I can feel the momentum. Need it all, no fractions. Dream it, then I gotta have it in the booth like Tom.